Hey, what's up, everybody? Thank you for joining me for another episode of OneMicNite, the podcast that brings you stories of artists and people on their personal journey, helping to guide, answer questions, and motivate you in the business. My name is MarcosLuis, and today my guest is incredible. He is a filmmaker, a writer, a producer. He's the dean of associate professor, of the University of Texas at Austin. And he is an activist. I'm so happy to have him here on the podcast. Please welcome Yake Smith to the show. What's up, Yake?
Hey, brother, how you doing? Nice to be here. Thanks for the invite.
Good, thank you. Listen, man, I have questions. First of all,
I might have answers.
Who is Yake Smith?
All right, first, you saying Yake, it's Yaki.
Yaki, my bad. I'm so sorry.
It's all good. Everybody does that, you know. Who am I, man? You kind of describe me as who I am. You know, I'm an activist first. One who believes in the power of stories and their ability to change the world. One who believes that filmmaking, and I say specifically filmmaking, but I just mean all art in general, but it is not really meant to be done just for the sake of doing it, right? That there should be not only a catharsis for the maker or the creator of that art, but then that sort of cathartic experience that the maker has when that work is exhibited, when it's screened in a film festival, when it's a painting hanging on a wall, whatever it may be, that the viewer should also have some kind of sort of cathartic experience, and then an experience that really begins to change certain narratives, right? Because I think a lot of times what we forget is that film, especially when it comes to Black people, film has been used as a weapon against us, and all art really has been used as a weapon against us, right? Once it sort of got into the hands of, you know, colonizers and people with a sort of colonialist mindset, they understood the power of the image to continue to imprison Black folks and damage our reputation and really sort of dehumanize us. And so for me, I believe that a good piece of art begins to rewrite that narrative, right? And it begins to make us see ourselves in a different way, but it also allows other people who don't know us, or even for us, experiences that we have not had. It allows us to see into other people in a way that we probably would not be able to see into them had it not been for that piece of art that we are actually engaging with. I'm also, you know, I'm a professor, you know, and I say that not as a sort of vocation, but I think that I have always been sort of teaching and guiding people, right? And not really sort of knowing that, not understanding that every time somebody called me into the editing room with them, you know, at 3:00 in the morning when I'm in my dorm room sleeping and they called me because they didn't know how to do something, I was teaching them, I was helping them, I was guiding them, and that's sort of what I do anyway. And again, that becomes an extension of the activist work and the storytelling work, because they all sort of exist at an intersection and they all are in constant conversation with each other.
Right.
I'm a father, right? I'm a husband. And I am, you know, again, someone who believes that in order for there to be meaningful change in the world, that we all must be willing to put ourselves on the line to see that change happen. That we can no longer afford to sit idly by while things are happening to our people, while things are happening in the world that don't align with who we are, things that are happening in the world that ultimately will come around to haunt us. You know, I'm just thinking about all of the racial sort of, this idea of a racial reckoning that's happening in the United States right now because of George Floyd, and also thinking about how when that first happened, we were all like, yeah, right? Everybody was in it. And now, you know, a year and a half later, yeah, the trial is happening, but a lot of people have really forgotten. And I also wonder how many people are actually engaging. I'm not saying to watch the trial, because I've not been watching it. That stuff's too traumatizing for us. But I do believe that there are those who were excited during that time who are no longer excited. And I say that to say that's because once we get past the excitement of seeing someone murdered, we have to then get to a place where we're willing to dismantle the systems and structures that actually allow that to happen.
Absolutely. Do you think, I'm going to stop you for 1 second, but do you think that because of the George Floyd thing that happened in the summer of 2020, I've said this on a couple of episodes, do you think it was because we had the pandemic at that time that things, like people had more time on their hands to do that? Now people are struggling with, the fact that the COVID is, finally leaving, and people are sending their attention other places, financial, they got to get back to work. You know what I mean? Like, you're right, having something like that happen, but we also need to take action along with it. And do you think that because the pandemic happened, that people were able to come out and do some stuff, do some work, and some change started happening?
Yeah, I mean, I think because of the pandemic, right, we saw those images over and over and over again, and there was no real escape from those images, right? Because we were at home. So even if you're at home working, like I have been for the last year or so, you sort of are always looking at Twitter, you're always like on Facebook, you're always looking at CNN.com and reading the BBC or whatever, and you're always just sort of confronted with these images. And so I think when you see an execution like that, I think the human side of you sort of, it comes on, right? And that's what makes you take to the street, because you cannot get away from it. You cannot go to the office, you cannot hide, you're not in bars with your coworkers, right? But my point in saying that is, like, I would hope that when you finally were confronted with that you went beyond the sort of superficiality, or I should say the superficial nature of sort of activating together, meaning that was sort of like a knee-jerk reaction because of how graphic and horrible that was. But once we get past that, we got to go deeper. And regardless of whether we're back at work and we're dealing with the pandemic and people got to just deal with themselves, we cannot separate the idea of that kind of death and that kind of systemic execution of Black bodies. You can't separate that from your job. You can't separate that from the stuff you teach in your classroom. You can't separate that from the ways in which you deal with your kids' teachers, because in many ways they're all like intricately connected. And I think to end it here, when we separate it, that's when no change really happens, because we don't see the links between all of it.
Right. I mean, we don't necessarily have to end it here, but I do want to say, what the point I was making with the pandemic was, you have other people joining in with us. So then the cause becomes bigger, the support becomes bigger, and you know what I mean? And that's when the action takes place. Now people are, our white brothers and sisters and other people, non-people of color are now doing whatever they do. They're not in on the fight with us as much as we are. We're still in the fight because we live it. We have to be
every
in
day.
the fight.
Every day. And my comments were really about them, right? Because I think that's what, and even when you start to talk about privilege, and I think that's something when I always talk to my white colleagues, I'm like, you don't understand that there's actually a privilege to be able to distance yourself from this thing, right? Because we can't. I don't have the privilege of whiteness where I can feel bad and give to the ACLU and give to the NAACP for like 3 weeks and be activated for 2 months and then like go back to business as usual. Because the moment that I try to go back to quote unquote business as usual, this thing slaps me in the face yet again. We have Dante Wright. Literally, we're in the middle of a trial for murder and somebody else is killed. You
took the words right out of my mouth.
And so that, again, we can't separate these things. And it's funny because like I'm an associate dean of diversity, equity, and inclusion at UT. And oftentimes there's the it takes time mentality. And as much as I get that, my response to that is always, how much time is it gonna take? Because we've been fighting this for 400 years. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like really, how much more can I take? As James Baldwin said, you told my mama to wait. You told my aunt to wait. You told my uncles to wait. I can't keep waiting.
Right.
I can't look at my nephew in the face, my son in the face, and say, well, you gotta wait your lifetime again. And I can't sit back idly by and watch these responses be as prescriptive as they are, because there has to be a book, a rule book, a blueprint somewhere, because it's the same exact response every time these things happen to us. It's like literally they're having a conversation somewhere and saying, this is how you should respond to police execution of black bodies. This is how you should respond when you're dealing with racism at work. It's all of that. And they know the responses, but those responses actually don't create the systemic change that we need. Because if they did, guess what? We wouldn't keep dealing with this stuff over and over again.
Yeah, exactly. So where do we go? What do we do? That's the big question. You know what I mean? That's the question of the moment. Where do we go?
It's hard.
I mean, we see the change happening slowly, you know, in different ways, but you know, I don't know if we need some sort of administration to then be the, you know, like a head of something that then designates this needs to change, this is going to happen, this is going to happen, this is going to happen. But something definitely needs to happen.
You're right. I mean, and it's interesting because, like, in my filmmaking, the one thing that I am always doing is I am looking through everything with an empathetic eye, right? I really want to look at even the racist, right? The sexual predator, right? I really want to get inside the mind and understand that kind of psyche, because I do believe that no one is born an evil person. I don't think anybody is born racist. I don't think any of that is true. I actually think we are all programmed to quote unquote stay in our place, whatever that place is. That's why it takes education and doing the hard work of learning and unlearning a lot of the things that by the time you 6 or 7 have been ingrained inside of you, right? Yeah. And I say that to say that that's through the film, but when you get into the actual work, when you lead with that empathy, as you should, we should always lead with empathy, but we should always understand something, that changing hearts and minds of people do not change structures and systems. Those are two different things. And so, yes, I want to speak to your heart and your mind and your soul. And I will definitely, I've had very difficult conversations with people who have said very racist things, and I've been patient with them. Because in my mind, I sort of understand, you just speaking some crap you don't even understand. However, on the flip side of that, the way that I really apply pressure is that I create a system and I mandate things that you must do. So for example, when I think of, you know, desegregation, you know, just even the bus, for example, right? Changing the hearts and minds of the people that rode the bus means nothing.
Right.
What do you have to do? You have to create a law. And once that law is created, and now it is illegal for you to do that to me, it's still going to be a struggle, because again, now I'm dealing with something that's been ingrained forever and ever and ever in people. Absolutely. But that law actually helps to facilitate the change. And then I can start talking and doing some of those other things. But we need more laws. And to your point, I would love to see and maybe it's in the White House or something, but I would love to see a task force on like anti-racism or something like that, right? Where we start making laws. Like I just was watching a video, if you, white man, harass this young 14-year-old boy because he's walking through your neighborhood and you standing all in his face asking him why is he there, why is he doing that, you should be charged with something.
Right.
And when you start doing that, we will start seeing a lot of this stuff stop happening.
Absolutely. And that was exactly my point. That's exactly what I mean. Should we designate a task force to do that? And that's where the change comes, through that action. We need that.
Yeah, man. We do. And that task force should be comprised of Black folks, indigenous people, because they are the first to be pillaged and have their land taken from them here in America. We should have women on there. We should have people that are not white identifying on this task force. They should be making the rules, and then they should take these things to the white identifying people who actually have the power to make the change.
Absolutely. The ones who are the victims of all these things happening.
Yeah, man. That's what I think it's Patrice Cullors says, those who are close to the pain need to be the one trying to make the change. And that's true. And I just paraphrase that, I think, but it's real, right? Because you don't understand the pain if you haven't lived it.
Absolutely. I want to talk about one of your pieces too, because Dear Bruh, where did that come from? Incredible. Let me tell you, first of all, you sent it to me a while ago. I watched it a couple of times. Recently, I watched it again. Then I stopped watching it and I just listened to it. Incredible. It hit so many different levels for me. Tell us a little bit about what it is and where it came from and what it means to you.
Yeah, man. So it's interesting that you say you finally sort of watched it without watching. You just listened to it because it started as a poem. That's what it was.
Okay.
Right. I never thought it was going to become a film. It must have been in 2015 or 16, maybe 2014. I started doing this thing where it was called Yaqui's 21 Days of Reflection. And every day I would post something about revolution, right? Something about the pain of watching Black death. Something about the ways in which I think we could sort of create a blueprint for liberation, and emancipation. Some of them were videos, right? I had one called Make America Great Again, and it was sort of showing Trump. And I'll never forget, it was that moment in one of his rallies where he kicked that young lady out, the Black woman.
Right.
And he said, how she would have been dealt with 50 years ago, This stuff that he just said that people just kind of overlooked. Right. And it's like, this is why we see what we see now. But anyway, and I was like, man, this is crazy. And so again, I started writing these things. And so when George Floyd happened, actually, I was like, man, I have been wanting to turn this into something for the last year. I have been wanting to sort of create some kind of visual piece. I thought it was going to be like a short film, inspired by it. I thought it was going to be animated. I actually said, okay, I'm going to maybe create short animated vignettes and have the poem read over that. But when George Floyd happened, and really inspired by like Arthur Jafa's, I forgot the name of the piece, and it'll come to me in a minute. I think is it The Revolution is, anyway, it'll come to me in a second, but inspired by what Arthur Jaffa did, I said, you know what I could do? I could just get actors to read this, and then I can basically just get as much archival, because the footage is there, right? It's all been told. Love is the message, and the message is death is the name of Arthur Jaffa's piece. And so sort of looking at that and saying I could just use archival footage, I could use, again, contemporary and current news footage. I could use stuff that I find. I mean, I dug everywhere. I was on IG, I was on Facebook, I was on Twitter. And I said, I want to sort of create a visual representation of what it means to mourn the life of Black people who have been killed, and also to humanize them, because when people become a hashtag, don't get me wrong, I think those hashtags are important, but we forget this is somebody's like brother, right? This is somebody's daddy. Yeah. This is somebody's son, and they are dealing with this pain long after we say their name for a year. That mother has still lost her child, right? Still lost her baby. That son or daughter does still not have their father, and will have to grow up without that person in their life. And so not only did I want to sort of talk about the pain that I personally feel, but I also wanted to sort of give voice and visual representation to the pain that I think the family members feel. And I wanted to really sort of charge us all with taking action, because ultimately just feeling pain and not doing anything about it means absolutely nothing. That pain must become, again, something that propels us into action. Absolutely. And propels us into continue not only saying their names as a name, but saying their names as a way to actually enact real and affect real change in our country. Right. And so it came out of all of that,
I like that. And I want to backtrack to something you said. We were talking about people, the action that people take. And it's not just, we can go out in the street and we can protest or we can make laws, but it is inclusive of those people sitting behind the computer and donating money. Yes. It's all that as together. It's not, it's a whole fight together. So we need that too. So I just want to clarify that too. That's not what you're saying. You're not saying don't do that, but.
No, I'm saying that I think all of that is activism, right? Yeah. I really do. I think that, because it's funny to get into the story about what activism is. And I have to remind myself this. I am an artist first, right? I'm an activist and an artist. And it is through my art that I can fight. Yes. It is through my art that I can bring light. It is through my art that I can galvanize those people who are actually going to go out and fight in the streets, right? Absolutely. And also, guess what? Yeah, I need some white ally who will never even make themselves known to give $1 million to the cause, because
right.
that's how we fuel the cause. That's how we continue to be able to fight these things. Money makes the world go round, and we know that. And I think it's the money and the people getting together and galvanizing and hitting the streets, and the artists speaking loudly, and the newscasters bringing light to these things as they're happening. And then honestly, us with our cell phones just recording some of these things that are happening, all of that together is what builds the movement. And that's all activism in my mind. Activism does not mean that you got to go do a die-in front of your Capitol. Right? You don't have to do that. We need that, but that is not the only way to be an activist.
Right. Do you feel empowered as an independent filmmaker to do that kind of stuff, to create your own art and say, yeah, I want to do it from this point to this point. This is my shit.
Yeah.
This is my work. This is my art.
Yeah, man. And
nobody can tell me anything differently.
Yeah, and as long as we can do that, we should, but we also got to understand this. And this is where it becomes really difficult, and this is where, as artists, we become conflicted. The minute that somebody else starts bankrolling, now you have to adhere to some of their rules. And that might mean that your voice, if you're not careful, your voice can be stolen from you. And that's why I think it's so important for us as Black artists. That goes back to one of the first things I said. There's a sacrifice that has to be made. Because I'm not going to just say yes to you because I'm excited that finally I'm going to be in the mainstream, yet I'm doing a disservice to my people via art. Because guess what? That art, that film, it's going to live forever. Mm-hmm. And I have to be very conscious of the image that I'm putting out. And so, yes, right now, I don't have nobody telling me anything. I can do what I want to do. And look, I do know that there are certain compromises that have to be made when you start bringing in investors. I get that.
Right.
But there are certain things that I will not compromise. I will not compromise being unapologetic. I will not compromise that I'm an activist. I will not compromise the certain images of my people that I want to put out. I will not compromise telling the good, bad, and ugly about my people, because sometimes we as Black people even want to deal with this whole notion of respectability politics, right? And we want to operate in that and forget that this whole notion of, if you wear a suit, they won't kill you. That's the worst thing I've ever heard in my life.
Absolutely is, yeah.
They killed Malcolm X, they killed King, they all had on suits, Medgar Evers, and then they just pepper sprayed somebody who literally was in a uniform. He's a lieutenant in the army.
Right, yeah.
So explain to me what that has to do with anything. And my point is like, I want to tell all of those narratives, because I believe that we must tell those narratives unapologetically, and we must give voice to our people. We must give them their agency back. One of my favorite films is Boys in the Hood, and it's my favorite film because of two things. One, he pulled no punches, and he was telling a story that I understood intimately because I was living that. Right? Those are my God brothers.
Yeah.
That was me. I was watching that stuff out of my front window in the project of San Antonio, right? So I felt that, but I also love the fact that John Singleton, I'm sure there was some compromise that had to be made, but he kind of made a film the way he wanted to make a film. The way he wanted
to, yeah.
Right? Yeah. He called the shots on that, right? He made a movie that, again, invited white people into a community that they had not ever been in, and because they had never been in it, they had judged those individuals. They had written so poorly about them in the media and dehumanized them, right?
Yep.
And he said, no, let me show you the real story. I'm not saying that gang violence doesn't exist, but I'm going to tell you why it exists.
Right.
I'm not saying that crack addiction doesn't exist, but I'm also not going to let the government off of the ways in which they literally poured crack into poor Black neighborhoods, right? We got to talk about all of it, because this is a multi-layered
side
thing.
of the story. Yeah,
man.
We need to see that. Everybody needs to see that.
And
I feel like that's what you do in your work. I've seen several of your pieces. That's exactly what you do. Do you feel like growing up, like you said, growing up in the projects, was that was the big thing for you? That was the big, entry point to being able to tell these stories and see life in a way.
Yeah, it was, man. Because I think for me, when you live in an environment like that, and you have human connections, right? And I mean, these were my brothers, these are my sisters, this is my aunt, this is my uncle, this is my mama you talking about, right? And to see those individuals who you know are literally working 3 and 4 jobs to survive. The corner boy out there at 15 who would rather be in school, but guess what? He got to help mama and daddy pay the rent. The young lady who is sort of trying to figure out who she is as a human being and figure out who she, and she finds herself getting caught up with some crazy dude who becomes a pimp right there. I knew those people as human, and so then to see them portrayed as villains in the media, there's a cognitive dissonance there, because you're like, wait a minute, who's writing this? And I think even at 11 and 12, I understood this, that there was somebody who was crafting these narratives who had never stepped foot in the neighborhood that I lived in. They had never met these people, because if they had, they couldn't talk about them so poorly. They couldn't judge them the way that they were. And so I knew early on, that's why Boys in the Hood at 11, I was 11 when that movie came out. Even then, I knew that's the kind of movie that I want to make one day. Those are the kinds of stories that I have to tell, because again, he's reframing the narrative and he's humanizing individuals who not only have been dehumanized, but whose story and voice have been stolen from them and used as weapons against them. Right. And so living in that and seeing that, I said, this is what I want to do. And that's why when you see my narratives, I'm telling those stories about those people that we oftentimes overlook. And not through I want to make sure I say this right, but like, I oftentimes think that sometimes our white sort of filmmaking colleagues, I'll call them, they make these narratives and they sentimentalize everything. It's not human anymore. Everything is so sentimental and sad, and it's so hard. It's like, no, I laughed a lot when I was a kid, right? I had fun. Like, we were out in the street playing football and basketball, and I wasn't really playing sports a lot, but in the library, and we out in the hood, like we found joy in those spaces.
Right. It's a whole different perspective. There's a whole different perspective, and that's what we're giving. When we tell our own stories. Exactly. Because it's like somebody, when they tell it, it's like somebody looking from the outside in, but when we tell it, it's us looking from the inside, so we can tell it out.
Yes,
we know the story. You just said it, like, we had joy. We might not, we may not have had a lot of money, but we found joy in other things. We found joy along the way to make it happy. We got into some trouble too. This is our story with trouble, but this is why we got into trouble from our perspective.
Yeah, man. And it's also interesting because it's like, oftentimes, and I see this a lot, we sometimes even judge ourselves when we're living in it. We blame ourselves because, again, we don't know our own history. We don't understand the history of redlining. We don't understand systemic oppression. We don't understand that, again, I was watching them last weekend. We don't understand that they're bringing us in and literally putting a 20% APR on our loans, so that these predatory loans where we can't even pay our mortgages off. Literally, right?
Yeah.
But it's not until you get out of that and you can sort of have that, 1,000-foot look at it, where you realize, oh shit, this stuff is really by design, right?
Yeah.
Like, they literally have created these systems and structures which are meant to imprison us and keep us bound. And they first start psychologically, obviously, because that's what you do. You have the people wage psychological warfare, right, on themselves. I mean, I even think about, I hope I'm not going on a tangent, but I even think about, like, I'll never forget, I was listening to a message by Louis Farrakhan, and he said something that I thought was interesting. He was like, you got to remember something. This is how they work. They would take the man, right, the strongest black man on the plantation, and they would dehumanize him publicly in front of his wife, in front of his kids, in front of the other slaves on the plantation. Because what that did is that said, hold up, if any of you do anything wrong, this thing will happen to you too. You also can be subject to this kind of brutality on your body, so you better listen. But also, the psychological warfare part of it is, now this woman can't even look at her man the same. These kids can't even see their father the same. And so he flees. because he can't even really feel like a protector and a provider in his own home, because he can't even protect his own body. And that same sort of mentality has followed us for so long, because they keep enacting the same kind of violence. No, it's not a public, lynching. No, it's not putting me in a place where I'm publicly flogged. But again, it's putting me in jail for having a couple of ounces of weed. Yet now, cannabis, whatever we call it now, is $1 billion industry that I don't even get to participate in.
Exactly. Yeah.
So yeah,
I go on. No, you're right. You're absolutely right. And that's what I wanted to know. That's exactly the perspective. What do you have coming up? I mean, you are an award-winning filmmaker and some incredible work. What do you have mulling around in that head right now?
Yeah, man. A lot, right? So I have this anthology series that I shot last year at the beginning of the pandemic. It's probably last April or May. Called The Pandemic Chronicles. And we had distribution through Full Spectrum Features. So we were in like over 100 spots virtually for the month of February. And then I just found out that web series, or anthology series I'll call it, is going to be screening at another festival. But it's won, a couple of awards, and has been written about pretty favorably, because it really just deals with the different ways that we're dealing with the pandemic, depending upon race, gender, class, all of that good stuff. And then, so that's out in the world. And then I'm working right now on a new feature. It's been a decade since I shot Wolf.
Wow.
And I've been steadily working between, doing shorts, doing an anthology series, web series, been having some success with that. But it's time for me to make a new feature, and I'm excited about this new feature because it's the story of a 12-year-old kid. It's about everything we've been talking about, who killed a cab driver when he was 12 years old, and was sentenced to 40 years in prison. Served 29 years of those and was released last year at the age of 40. So from 12 to 40, he was in the system. And the story is he wrote a manuscript which sort of details his life leading up to the murder. And the film I'm working on is about him, so it's about this 12-year-old kid who's really 10-year-old kid, because between 10 and 12, who's trying to sort of navigate life in the concrete jungle, as I'll call it, right? Really just trying to figure out who he is. He's trying to take care of his family, so he's out there selling his drugs, and he's trying to care for his mom and keep her away from her abusive sort of husband. And then, also he's sort of emulating his role models, which were other, men who were out doing the same thing. And so this story really is about him, and the plan is to shoot this time next year. So I'm hoping around June, maybe May or June of 22. I shouldn't say hoping. We will be shooting this in May or June of 22. You got to call it out, yeah.
That's right.
So, and then I'm working on various other things. I'm gonna be shooting a music video soon, and I'm working with a company to do a commercial for them right now. I just had a meeting with them not too long ago, and so I have all these sort of irons in the fire,
I like that. One of the hardest working men I know. You're always moving, always moving. When you look back over your work, and I know you're not anywhere near done, are you proud? Are you happy? What's your feeling?
I'm proud, man. I mean, it's interesting because I have embraced something, and that is that first and foremost, the work will find an audience, and the work will find an audience that it was made for.
Yes.
I am a person who believes that God really not only gave me the desire to tell stories, but that God leads and guides me in the storytelling that I do. And I'm constantly listening to God's voice. And I say that to say that not only am I really proud of the work, but I feel like I am on a mission with the work, and that I am accomplishing what it is I'm supposed to do, not only physically as a filmmaker, but spiritually as a man, right? As a human being. And I believe that there's a connection between those. Do I feel fulfilled? Now, you get frustrated, right? I'm gonna be very honest. It's very frustrating when you pour yourself into something and it doesn't hit, right? And you're trying to get the investors to help you with that next feature, and you're getting all the doors closed. I've been trying to get into TV for a long time, and I keep hearing, we got to see more work from you, and I'm like, I don't know how many more films I got to make to show you that I can direct television, right? But again, what I do, I realize this, that everything happens in its own timing. And so I'm not only proud, again, I feel like I am doing the mission, and I also feel like if I continue to do what I'm doing, if I continue to make these films, if I continue to really not think about any end product, but really think about the story and think about the ways in which these narratives will affect the audience, that everything that I desire will come to me, right? I don't have to force it. I don't have to break down a door. They will come and knock on my door because I will have done what I am supposed to do. And that's always my advice. Do the work. Love the work. Fall in love with the art. Fall in love with the message. Fall in love with why you decided to be a filmmaker or an artist in the first place. And that love that you have for your art and really the sort of ways in which you listen to your creator to help you create that art, that will draw to you what needs to be drawn to you. That doesn't mean you don't, keep working and trying to apply for this or that. I'm not saying you don't do that, but I also believe that you can't get all depressed and crazy about it.
Right.
It is what it is. I applied to your lab, you didn't let me in, on to the next. It's all good. Somebody will love the work.
Right.
Because that's why I'm doing it.
Amen. Amen, man. Bro, you inspired me years ago. You still inspire me. I still see you. I see you. I'm here to support you. Wow, man. Please come back anytime. I got to wrap it up because we're running out of time. But a little...
Where you at, baby? Baby, where you at?
That's my mom. Mom, be quiet. She wants to know where we can find you on social media. Hold on, Mom.
Hey, Mama, how you doing?
I know, Mom. Just calm down.
Yeah, so you can find me on my website, exodusfilmworks.com. It has all my work there. I'm also obviously on all the social media platforms. I'm on IG, Yaki80, Facebook, Yaki Filmmaker, Twitter, Yaki80. And then, just a quick Google search, you can find a lot of my work as well. Find my Vimeo page. I have stuff out. My feature Wolf is on Amazon Prime.
Yes.
So you can check that out.
Definitely check that out.
Yeah, my web series, The Beginning and Ending of Everything, is on a platform called A Space for Creators. So you can go there and check it out. And I'm constantly just putting out content. So just follow me on all those platforms and ultimately you will find my work.
I love it. Everybody, please make sure you follow him, Yaki.
Here you go. You got it. It's all good.
I'm sorry. Yaki80 on IG and Twitter. Go to Exodus Films. Check out where you can find all his work because he's doing it big, man. If you don't know him yet, you will know him in big, big ways. Thank you, brother. Please come back to the show anytime. The next project you have, come back and let us know what you got going. Please.
Yeah, brother. And I really appreciate you inviting me here. I appreciate your support over the years. And I will definitely come back.
You got it. Everybody, please make sure you download and share these episodes. We got great people on here with great stories doing great big things. You can find us at OneMicNite. OneMicNite is spelled ONEMICNITE. And you can follow me at MarcosLuis, MarcosLuis. Go to the .com for both. Find all the links to the social media. And we got a big surprise for you at OneMicNite coming up soon. I'll release the info. So please stick around. We got you. OneMicNite, MarcosLuis. I'm out.